Welcome to another episode of The Corner Booth, the official podcast of restaurantowner.com. Today, the restaurant industry is changing faster than ever. Learn from successful independent restaurant operators and other industry leaders as they share best practices that will help you engage your team, delight your guests, and grow your business.
And welcome everyone to another Corner Booth. I'm Chris Tripoli with restaurantowner.com. And today we're coming to you from California, where we're going to share a story of worker, manager, contract food service, multiple airport person, breakaway, entrepreneur, develop an idea, and boom, it connects and it's rapidly expanding. I'm talking about Shawn Lalehzarian. Shawn is the founder. He's the CEO of Red Chickz, the Red Chickz. Some of you may have already come across it. Red hot brand, Nashville spiced chicken, growing from California, moving quickly. We're going to hear all about it. Shawn, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Corner Booth.
Chris, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
As I mentioned to you, I'm kind of a fan of this segment. I love the spicy, crispy, crunchy chicken. Can't wait to hear your version, how you put your spin on it. In fact, there's a location of yours in the suburb of Houston. I think it's in Cypress, Texas, very close to where my daughter and her family live. That's the one I've seen.
That's right.
I know right where that is, in that shopping center in Fairfield or Fair.
That's correct.
Yeah, I know it. I will be there. So let's get started. Before we get into the details of the concept development and the operating of a growing company, maybe you could tell the listeners just a little bit about you, how you got interested in the business, your first jobs, who were your influences, so we get to know you a little bit and how you got into where you are today.
Absolutely. I moved to United States from Iran back in 98, and I didn't really know much about this country. I didn't even know how to speak English. So a couple of weeks after we moved here, I started working at the restaurant as a dishwasher. It was the easiest job to get, didn't really require much. So I started as a dishwasher, and gradually, as I was going to ESL classes and college, gradually moved up to being a cook for a couple of years and then a server at that restaurant. But very early on, I want to say maybe a couple of months into being in the restaurant environment, I was very certain that one day I want to own a restaurant. I still didn't know what I want to do. I didn't know if this is going to be my career, but I decided that one day I want to own a restaurant.
There you go. Very early on, you knew that.
Right. I just love the energy and the atmosphere and, just the whole flow of back of the house, front of the house. So I went through it. I was a cook for a couple of years. As my English got better and I could have a conversation, stuff, got promoted and became a server at that very same restaurant. And did that for about a year or so. And then eventually I left that restaurant and started working with HMS Host at San Diego Airport as an assistant manager. And I got hired there and I ended up working with Host for about 10 years. Went from assistant manager to senior ops manager, running multiple airport operations. And during that time, I also was part of the NRO team for the corporate. So I opened about 50 different restaurants around the nation and Canada, different airports. And throughout all these years, I got to work with brands as an operator in airport, managing them and running them. And I also got to work with brands to open them, some being involved from the very early stages of developing the concept. I was part of John Wayne Airport when they were adding the third terminal there. So from the very beginning, how did the concept was developed and the design was based on that concept. And so I was involved in all of that and eventually left airport operation in 2014 and started our very first restaurant with my two partners in downtown LA. In 2016, we opened our second concept. In 2018, we opened Red Chickz.
Okay.
A little about how I got to be in this field and what my background looks like.
So there you go. We meet a lot of people that get into this industry from, say, other industries. And they tell their story of how they, maybe were always driven to want to get into the hospitality industry. They had different, I don't know, maybe different visions of grandeur, but they spent 30 years as a whatever, oil pipe machinery salesperson. They couldn't wait to take early retirement, and they run into our industry. And we've been hearing, many stories like that. It's refreshing to hear this, where many of our listeners are also like you, lifers, got started by working, and then somehow the bug caught them. They loved it. I like the way you described it. There's a certain energy in our industry. There seems to be a certain positive feel from the multitasking that goes on when people are working together. And if it connects and if it gets into your bloodstream, boom, it's there. That's what I'm hearing, when I listen to your story all through management. I think you were really fortunate, really, with the amount of experiences that you had, because that 10 years with HMS Host wasn't really administrative and supervision only. You got into an awful lot of openings. You said over 50 different openings and concept development at multiple locations. So there was an awful lot of that hands-on entrepreneurship, I think, that you were able to get as an experience while you were in that position. Good for you. Okay, so now we're in 2018. You have your first Red Chickz. Why don't you talk a little bit about the concept for people who may not be familiar, what your influence was in doing the concept, how you created this, quick, casual, spicy Nashville chicken flavor that you have.
Absolutely. So in 2018, as downtown LA was changing, we decided that we wanted to change the concept of our very first restaurant that we opened in 2014 and make it a more concept focused rather than what we had back then, which basically had 70 different items on the menu and just open 20 hours a day and doing all sort of things. So as we were doing research, back then, we didn't have any burger joint or fried chicken joint in downtown LA. And we were doing research on those two to see which one would be a better fit for us. And as we were doing research on fried chicken, we came across Nashville hot chicken. And back then, Nashville hot, the wave of Nashville hot was not there yet. It was just the beginning. Back then, there was only one Nashville hot chicken in LA, Holland raised. And so what we did, we basically went out to Nashville with one of my partners for a couple of weeks and asked everyone from the bellman at the hotel to the Uber driver that was taking us around if they had anyone in their family that knows how to make Nashville hot chicken. And a couple of these folks invited us to their homes and gave us the recipe of a homemade Nashville hot chicken. So to this day, the recipe of the seasoning that we put on our chicken, the Nashville hot seasoning that we put on the chicken, and our comeback sauce is the original recipe we brought back from Nashville. We haven't touched it. Obviously, as we were out there and doing this, we basically went out to every Nashville hot chicken in Nashville and tried them and look at the feel and atmosphere and design and touches. And we came back and put Red Chickz together and opened in 2018. And from the early on, we had a couple of standards that we want to make sure that we have it. I was very focused on making sure that the chicken has flavor by itself. Even if there's no seasoning on it, the chicken should have flavor. And so I was working on that. And my other partner was very big on crunch. And we wanted to make sure that we hit all those pointers when it comes to fried chicken. And I never knew or thought how complicated it can be if you want to have all these pointers there. If you want to make sure that the batter doesn't fall off and stick to the chicken, no matter how long it sits out there. And at the same time, you don't want it to be very thick. You want it to be light. And at the same time, you want to make sure that it doesn't hold oil in the batter. So when you bite into it, you don't get that burst of oil in your mouth. And doing all that with the batter, but you want to make sure the tender stays juicy. And so we spent about 6 months and multiple chefs and all sort of things that we got involved to finally finalize the product that we've been serving since 2018 and pick the tagline of the crunchiest hot chicken because that was our focus. So we stand by it, and we could finally create a product that is crunchy and you can let it sit out there for 24 hours and still holds the crunch. The chicken stays moist and juicy, and all the pointers that we were looking for were brought to life. And it took a little time, but it was great to achieve it and be able to serve the product that we do today.
That's such a good reminder. Sometimes we need to be reminded that having a focus on what might be a simple task, limited menu, one item, it's chicken, it's fried. But I think the listeners are probably getting a really good point that you're making, that keeping things simple and staying on focus doesn't mean it's easy. And so it's good to hear that, focusing on crunch, focusing on flavor, making sure that you can consistently have it fried correctly requires time, and so it's good that you dedicated that time. I love crunchiest hot chicken. What a good tagline. Great focus to be. So take us through the menu then. Is it strictly chicken sandwiches, chicken plates? What kind of side dishes did you create? What do you offer?
Absolutely. So I just want to make a point to what you just, and I love it. And that's basically what one of our core thought process in the concept is that we make the concept very simple. It's not easy, but it's very simple.
Right.
From the consumer standpoint and also for our operators. And I'll be happy to get into it as well. But so our menu, again, as we did the research and we went out to Nashville, we felt like the Nashville hot flavor is not just about putting the seasoning on chicken. It has a lot of opportunities out there that you can bring this to life and do all sort of creative things with it. So from the get-go, we try to not just fall into the category of we just have the original hot chicken sandwich and tender offerings. I think early on, we had Nashville hot shrimp on our menu. The very first menu that we put out, we had chicken and waffle on our menu with Nashville hot chicken and waffle. That's how we started. And then I think 3 months into it with that menu, we just expanded that menu to offering tacos. We got to French toast sandwich and French toast plates with hot chicken. And we really got to explore. We made multiple loaded plates with it. So currently we offer 5 different sandwiches under sandwich category in our menu. And then we have a home style, which includes obviously the tenders, but a couple of options are loaded, and then chicken and waffle and French toast. We offer tacos, salads, and on the side, actually, we also try to get a little creative and make offerings that you usually don't see in other Nashville hot chicken places. So we offer cheese curds and corn ribs, and trying to make it fun because that's the soul of what we discovered when we went to Nashville. It's the soul of the food and the environment, and you're supposed to have fun with it and get messy and enjoy the food. So we are trying to bring that fun in every aspect of the concept, including the menu.
There you go. Yeah, so it is. It's in addition to what you might be expecting, good chicken sandwiches and fries, your sides include cheese curds. Is the French toast like a sandwich, or is that more of a plate? Because that's something that sounds really interesting to me.
We do both, actually. So we use the French toast to make a sandwich, and we also offer the plate.
Are your hours including the breakfast day part, or is it strictly a lunch and dinner?
No, we open at 11 and we close at 9 o'clock, except weekends, we close at 10.
Got it. And are all of the locations fairly similar? By that, I mean, are they counter service with inside dining and with the availability for online ordering pickup, or do some have drive-throughs? How does it work?
We currently don't have a drive-through location yet. So all our location, yes, we are on third-party platforms. We have our own open delivery services and obviously the dining room.
Excellent. About how big is a good-sized Red Chickz?
We try to stay in 1,600 square feet space. A little smaller, larger will work with it, but we don't like to go into large footprints. That's not our concept. That's not
Yeah.
what we're trying to get to.
Well, I think we can get a pretty good picture of it. This is fast casual, 1,600 square feet, a menu that's a little bit more inventive. It's not just a chicken sandwich. Obviously, it's an excellent chicken sandwich, but you can get a little bit crazy if you want to go forward and do something different. So there's a good point of difference. The locations now, since you started in, 2018, in these last 7 years, where did you spread with your locations?
Absolutely. I want to just make a point on the size, Chris. I think, as you mentioned, I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to work with HMS Host in airport operation for the decade that I did. And what I learned there, because as you'll know, the real estate in airport is way different than real estate on street, right? So what I learned there was that we might go in and create a concept in a small footprint, but all the focus was how do we keep the back of the house small and the front of the house large, right? So through those designs and those operations, I learned how to use every inch of the floor and the walls for the back of the house so it doesn't take a good chunk of the real estate, and try to dedicate majority of the real estate to the front of the house. So I brought that experience and that knowledge to Red Chickz. So we go into a 1,500 square feet, 1,400 square feet real estate, but you'll be surprised with the size. I'm not saying that it's enormous, but in compared to the size of the real estate that we go to, you'll be surprised what size of dining room we get out of these, because we try to literally use every inch of the floor and the walls in our back of the house to keep it in that box that we want to. But
and that's a great note to make. Obviously, you're right. You came from a background where the use of real estate in places like airports is really premium. We always joked that if airport management found a janitor's closet, they would want to turn that into something that was income producing. Someone would
absolutely
how to sell something out of a 4x4 space. So, if you're fortunate enough to get 800 or 900 square feet in an airport to produce from, that's a big deal. So taking that knowledge, I think, is helpful. I think every listener could probably identify with that, because whether you have that kind of experience or not, you know that you're faced with the issue that Shawn was just talking about, and that is optimization of your space. Finding the right site is difficult enough, but affording it in this crazy real estate market where real estate values are high. And so if you can't do a concept that can be produced with volume, but very efficiently, tight spaces, that also means you can optimize your labor. And so that's another tremendous operating expense that we're, concerned with today. So it sounds like you've got two things really well focused with a efficiently designed back of the house. And then you can optimize operations by maximizing seats and having tight labor.
100%. And as you mentioned, I mean, some of the restaurants we go to, I walk into the back of the house and I'm like, I can probably put the entire concept in just back of the house of this restaurant. It's just so much space that, I mean, I understand every concept is different, but some concept, I think they can do a lot better in the design of the back of the house. But back to your question. So yes, we started in 2018. We decided to, and that had its own story as well, where we got a couple of months into opening our restaurant, we got a 1-star review that said, these guys are Taco Bell of Nashville hot chicken. And it really...
Probably not a real complimentary, probably not something that was very complimentary comparison that you were looking for.
No, absolutely not. It was a 1-star review and it was not pleasant at all. And it really stuck with me. And that night, Brian Nickel has always been someone that I look up to, his innovations and the way he runs companies and how he strategized the growth. And back then, Brian was on, I believe, the board. He had a board seat at Taco Bell. But anyway, so that night, the idea of franchising was created out of that review. I thought, what if we do become the Taco Bell of Nashville hot chicken from the giant, expansion standpoint, and share with my partners. Obviously, we were not ready yet because we were just in the business for a couple of months. But we stayed at it. We kept the idea. And I knew from my airport days, I knew that if we want to go that route, we need to lay the foundation. We cannot just go out there and start expanding and franchising. So we started working on the foundation and how to minimize inconsistency in our operation, what it would require, how do we systematically keep this standard so it's easy to duplicate. And it's also, like you mentioned, it's simple to operate. It's not too complicated. So we started working on that. We spent about a year or so getting the products that we could get pre-manufactured, like our seasoning and our flour, do that and get it out of the store operation, setting up our distribution and basically working on all that foundation as what was needed to be done. So once with it that we started getting our franchise set up and the service standards and everything that from the paper products and how we bring everything together, we eventually got into the market back in 2022. I believe a very limited expansion. We only started the expansion in 4 states. And the reason behind that was we wanted to make sure that we open an out-of-state restaurant close to our state first. So we go through all the challenges and the bugs and fix them and make sure that there are no challenges before we open doors to the entire nation and start opening all over the place. So we did that and we opened our Cypress store out in Texas. Went through a couple of hiccups that we had from distribution standpoints and how do we provide the support. And once all that was out of the way, the end of last year or mid last year was where we started basically expanding into all states. So we currently have 5 locations in operation. We have our 6th one coming online in about 3 weeks in Sacramento. And we have about close to 40 in development.
40 in development?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, you know what? You hit some really good points there. And I'm sure some listeners were probably shaking their head saying, oh my God, I've been there. The bad Yelp review really smacked us. But maybe they were also able to turn it into a well-focused response to standardize operations and improve efficiencies. And in your case, then document the standards and the purveyor and the distribution, the preparation, everything that's needed so that you are then confident in your growth. So if you have 5 units now, but 40 in the pipeline, when you mentioned wanting to start your growth through franchising, you mentioned opening 4 states only because you wanted to be close to your base in California. Again, another point I think worth emphasizing for those people who are planning growth, it's really good to take a step rather than a jump. So you didn't immediately answer somebody's phone call, say in North Carolina, just because it's a wonderful market, and say, yes, please go do multiple units. You said, we're going to open in, which were the states that you opened first, just to maintain support close by?
Absolutely. So we originally did California, Nevada, Arizona, and Texas. And it's funny that you mentioned that during those times that we only had these 4 states, we did get calls and prospects from other states that they're like, oh, this is great. We want to bring it to our market. We want to do 3-unit deal or 5-unit deal. And we had to say no. We knew, it's the right thing for our concept. We didn't want to just grow and have numbers on the books. We wanted to make sure we grow smart. We want to make sure
Yes.
that we grow in a pace that we can provide the support and we can control and keep the integrity of our brand, and we don't lose the consistency of our product. And we're also able to support our franchisees the way that they need the support. We didn't want to just open it and be like, okay, now you're on your own, go figure it out, and, so yes, we definitely had to make that decision and go that route. I'm not saying that everybody should or should not go that route. Obviously everyone's path and goals are different, but we chose the smart growth path rather than just, rapidly selling units and opening all over the place. And then trying to figure out, I've heard stories of, you know, one-offs that they were sold with other brands, and how distribution was a challenge, how supporting them was a challenge. And we didn't want to experience, or at least we wanted to minimize all those challenges. So yes.
Excellent. Well, I'm hearing more and more from small independents that their choice for expansion is through a franchise model. I don't know. Are you finding that? We're finding that it seems to be a growing popular thing for somebody who is in the business. Maybe they just have a couple of stores and they're thinking, I have something that can expand. And so I want to grow through franchising. Obviously, that was your choice. So,
Right.
but are you finding that with other people who are starting, where their plan really is, instead of, say, company growth, it's going to be franchise growth?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I've seen a good amount. Maybe it's because I'm, more involved in the industry, and also I look for these things. But you're absolutely right. I see more choices of expanding through franchising than corporate.
So, how many of your current stores are company operated and how many are franchised?
Sure. Two company operated in LA and three franchises, one in Carlsbad, San Diego, one in Fresno, and one Cypress, and next one coming up in Sacramento.
Excellent. Okay. Well, good for you. For those who are considering growth and might want to learn a little bit more about franchising, could you just give us the touches of the process? I mean, I know that there are two things that typically have to work simultaneously. You already highlighted one when you said you've got to really build a good foundation, operations, systems, product, specification, purveyor for distribution. There's probably more to that, I would imagine, with the operations materials that need to be written in a certain way so that they can be enforced through contract, things like marketing and support for site approval. But in addition to that, there's the legal aspect. Did you find legal specialists that handled the registration needed, the disclosure documents? And how long does this take? If you don't mind, me asking.
No, absolutely. So yes, like as you mentioned, there are two parts to it. One part is the legal part, right? So you gotta, for us, we hired a consulting company that put all that paperwork and what was needed together for us. It was a great blueprint, I want to say, right? But once we got the manual and everything that they put together for us, we had to go through it and really put our own touches in it and maybe change things the way that we wanted our brand to be, because that comes in a more of a standard way of the industry, which is great. Like I said, it's a fantastic blueprint because they cover all areas that you may not think about, but it will require your own touches after they're done. And then the legal part, yes, we hired a firm to do all the legal parts for it and put us where we need to be. I believe that entire process took about 6 months or so to finish that part. But I want to say, in comparison, from a franchisor perspective, that is the easiest part of becoming a franchise. I think if you want to be a successful franchisor, the challenging part is that foundation, is making sure that you have, before you even get into the franchise market and run your first ad or sign your first deal, you want to make sure that you have everything about your operation buttoned down, whether it's manufacturing your products, distribution, what sort of products you want to use, negotiation with the brand, which in the beginning is a little challenging because you may not have the volume, but how good you can sell the dream and make them see where you're trying to go and why your brand has the capability and potentials to get to that destination, and what you bring to the table as a leader to make sure that that brand gets to the destination. I think all that, everything from like we talked about, the design and paper product and the uniform and simple things as to what would be the flow in the kitchen that you can duplicate in every single store. And it's doable. You can duplicate that. And how would that affect the labor? All that stuff. For us, it was very important, as you mentioned earlier, that the labor cost is also another challenge in restaurant operations. So our goal from the get-go, when we were working on that foundation, was how do we minimize the labor cost in our operation? And we currently, there are only one or two items that they get prepped in our stores. Everything else comes to our stores pre-made. So there's really, our labor is very minimum in store because all they do, basically, they're on the line cooking the food and serving it. There's really nothing that you need a labor to do the prep or coming early. I mean, I've worked with brands like Chili's that you have a dedicated prep person, 10, 12 hours a day that you're just making everything from ranch to, all sort of preparation that happens in the kitchen. But our goal was to make sure. So I think those are the things that if somebody's thinking about getting into franchise and be successful, right, from the operator perspective,
Yes.
I think those are important points. I have seen brands, and it's nothing that's stopping or it's old, and I'm not saying it's good or bad, but I've seen brands that they have a good product and they're like, that's it, we got to get into franchise, and they get into the franchise world, and none of these things are set, and it gets very challenging when you want to do these sort of stuff when you have 2, 3, 5 franchise unit already in operation. Setting these things up and the standards it's just going to be very challenging, and it could affect the rate of success for those initial franchises and for the brand as a whole.
Well, boy, did you hit the nail on the head there. We've heard a lot of really good points here. I hope some of you who are, interested in maybe taking your brand franchise and are making note of this, that you don't want to hurry, and that it is harder, really, to take the time to detail everything that's important about your concept, the operations, the product, the distribution, the trade dress, etc. That's going to take longer. If you can do that and get the legal work done, and you're only investing 6, 7, maybe 8 months, that's wonderful. But I am going to want to underline, just because I've had personal experience with working with teams later, after they set up, after they franchised, and found that they didn't necessarily take the time and they did hurry. And now they've got 5 units out there. 3 of them, say, are franchise locations. Things are inconsistent. Things are not working to standard. To get it organized later, like you were mentioning, is really hard. It's like herding cats. We've had a couple of experiences doing that. And so I'm so thankful that you brought up the point of commit the time. Find industry specialists. That was another good thing that you brought up. And, they're out there. I mean, I trip over franchise attorneys that specialize in our industry. That's wonderful. So if people are listening and they're thinking, I want to do what Shawn is saying, I'm going to invest the time, use industry specialists, because they're going to help you with your operational systems. They're going to help you identify all the items you need in your foundation. They're also going to help you on the legal piece, which will prevent you, hopefully, from having 4 or 5 out there and then going, oh my, we got to get organized. Way, way too hard to do later.
Uh, Absolutely. And I just want to put this out there that, again, I was very fortunate working at Host. So those connections that I had and people that they were mentoring me while I was at Host operation and I kept contact with, there were resources that I could reach out to and say, hey, I'm doing this. And, you know, but, and they've been great help and they still are. And I still reach
Yeah.
out to them. But I also, in that very beginning, back in 2022, when we started franchising, I think I spent about 2, 3 weeks just messaging people on LinkedIn that they were in certain positions or they that I felt like I would love to connect with this person and just learn, what they can teach me or tell me about what I'm getting into and how to get ready. I don't know how many people I messaged on LinkedIn, probably 700, 800 people. And not everyone got back to me, but if I got about a handful of people that they responded and they were like, yeah, sure. I mean, here's my number. Feel free to reach out and I'll give you what I know. Right. And these people have been a great resource for me just when we come across something that we want to do, or I feel like, okay, we're getting to the next level of expansion and what do I need to be ready for and what are the possible challenges that can come my way and how can
Right.
I go around it. That mentorship, and as you mentioned, just having people who've done it before just show you the way and share their thoughts and perspective, priceless.
Excellent. I know. I've loved that about this industry. And we've heard it from other people that have joined us around the table in this podcast that we share experiences. It's a wonderful thing about the industry. And so if we can share experiences and learn from one another, it's a beautiful thing. Let's let's move on to now then. You're ready, you're growing. The key pointers that you look for when you select that franchise partner. Selecting a franchisee isn't like hiring a manager. These people aren't, say, direct employees. They don't work for your company. They are setting up their own company. Yet, obviously, you're there to direct, support, and approve some things. So there's got to be this interesting relationship. How do you find what you're looking for when you're, going to select a franchisee?
Great point, Chris. And we are very selective in selecting franchisees. Obviously, financial requirements and experience and these things are usually the requirements and majority of brands look for. And they want to make sure that the franchisee that comes on board is capable of executing what needs to be executed in order to open a store and run it successfully. But we go beyond that. As you mentioned, this is not like hiring a manager that if it didn't work out, you're gonna, replace them in 2 years. This is a long-term partnership. So for us, it's very important to make sure that not only they have these requirements, but we also can work and communicate and connect with this individual on a personal level. So we go through multiple interviews. I personally connect with prior to the discovery day, and I also show up at the discovery day. Majority of that is just analyzing the behavior and the thought process and how they see things and is their sense of urgency, is their commitment, do they think that they're going to do this and open doors and people are going to line up miles away, and they're just going to print money and they can just sit home and get a check, or do they realize that this is opening your own business and you got to put your effort and time and commitment to make it successful. And just like any other business, it requires all that. And what we're doing as a franchisor is we give you a brand that has been proven and we give you a how-to as to how to make it successful and expand, but the execution comes down to the franchisee. So that's another reason that our expansion has been slow and smart, because we don't just sign anyone who has the money and is excited to bring a brand to their area. We want to make sure that we bring somebody on board that is the right fit for a family and not only works for us, but also with other franchisees. So we don't have to face challenges 3 years into that partnership.
Wow. Excellent. So well-defined roles is what I'm hearing here. If you're finding people that have that connection, the communication, if you feel like they're challenged by the effort, they're willing to put in the effort, those are things that I was kind of picking up, especially when you said it's the franchisee that is responsible for the implementation. You can direct them, you can provide, you can be there to support, answer questions, assist. But those are all the kind of the words that I'm hearing from what you said: support, direct, assist, but you don't actually do. The
Right.
franchisee has to be the doer. So if you see that, you might have a partner. If not, I guess you might have a problem.
Absolutely.
So where do we go from here? What's sort of the short-term plan? What are we going to see next from the Red Chickz? You've got 40 pending developments. In development. In the next few years, what would we expect to see from Shawn and his team with Red Chickz?
Absolutely. So we have the next batch of stores that we are opening are going to be on the East Coast. So those stores are going to come online. As I mentioned, we have our strategy has not changed yet. We are trying to expand smart. Shake Shack is one of the models that we follow. They have great product. They know how to penetrate the market. They know how to expand, but you also don't see 3,000 units opening in a year. They take their time. They're very smart and they're very selective as to where they go, how they open a store. And that has been an influence for us as to how we take our steps into the expansion. So the goal is we are obviously on the expansion, and this is just the start since it's been a little less than a year that we actually opened doors to the entire state and we started ramping up on our expansion. And this is just the beginning. So a lot more coming on that end. We are also looking into bringing, like I mentioned, the creativity that we have in our menu. We want to bring that innovation even more. So we are focusing a little on that part to bring LTOs and some new innovative items on our menu and expand that way. Social media has been our focus from the get-go with 1.2 million followers on TikTok and 230 some thousand on Instagram with only 5 locations open. So pushing boundaries on that and getting us more success trend on social media and the marketing through that channel. So these are the things that you're focused on and for immediate next couple of years, I would say. And then as a long term, obviously our goal is to expand and sell out territories in the nation and then eventually move out into Canada and overseas. But that's a long-term goal. And when we get there, we're going to make sure that also happens in a smart and slow paced.
Well said. You've got excellent direction for the short term. I think I join many people that are going to be interested from the sidelines to watch the selected markets that you talked about, keeping the priorities on things like simplicity, execution, continued creativity. So this will help keep a concept fresh while it's also growing. Long-term international, sure, who knows? It could really, really work. That'll be a fun thing to watch too. But for right now, I want to say thank you so much for all of the story behind the concept, for the challenge of the operations, for how the growth was selected, how you're implementing the growth. These were wonderful points to share with our listeners today, and I wish you continued success. Can't wait to have you back after you've had some of these next 40 open. We can do a little review. We can do a little update. It'd be very exciting. Shawn, thanks so much for joining us here on Corner Booth today.
Thank you, Chris. And it would be an absolute pleasure to be on your show again.
So everybody check them out. The Red Chickz, by the way, that's spelled R-E-D. CHICKZ.com. Check them out. Look for them coming into a market real soon. This has been time spent with Shawn Lalehzarian, the CEO, the founder, and I'm sure you appreciate all the points that were made. Again, Shawn, thank you. Have a great rest of the day. And for everyone else, go make it a good shift and come back soon, and let's catch up on another episode of Corner Booth.
Thank you for joining us on the Corner Booth. We'll be back next Tuesday with more inspiration, insights, and industry best practices to help you engage your team, delight your guests, and grow your business.